What is up, YouTube? We are live again on a Wednesday. Just checking the levels here, making sure everything's going okay with the stream. Let us see. Receiving content. We'll see it in a moment. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Stream health is all green. Always with the date and time preferences messed up. All right, so let's fix that really quickly. How are you guys doing today on this wonderful Wednesday? Week 4 in a row of doing this live stream, which I'm super stoked about. I am happy to be doing them on a regular basis and back to a regular, for the most part, upload schedule as well. So putting out a couple of videos a week feels nice. It's funny because I always go through these lulls where I feel like I have little motivation to do videos, not because I don't want to do videos, but because I just get in a rut and I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And I write down ideas all the time, and it always takes something like seeing a video from somebody else, or just like really being inspired by a creator or movie or something like that to really get back in the swing of things and making videos. And it's happened to me twice in this like crazy world of YouTube, right? Once last summer, and then once right after I got my first job, or my job like recently. And it's like, it's just weird. I don't know. But I did lose a lot of time with that job, trying to learn stuff, trying to be productive, being at work a lot and having weird hours, especially at the beginning, really kind of made it difficult to put out videos on a consistent basis. But we're back up and running now. And surprisingly, if anybody in the chat right now, see, we've only got a few people watching currently, but if anybody's new, feel free to say, hey, because I've done a really weird thing today where I've picked up like 100 subscribers today, which is I've never done before. Like I think my best day before this was like 60 or something. So what is up, Luis? What is up, Jose? What is up, Larry? What is up, Donovan? What is up, Ashton? How are we doing today? Good afternoon to you too. What time is it where you guys are? I am all up in the 5 o'clock hour, Eastern Standard Time. But where are you guys located? Are you Eastern? Do you think it's YouTube burnout? Seems like a lot of YouTubers go through that. Yeah, for sure. It's partially that, right? There's a bit of a grind when it comes to this sort of thing, a bit of a struggle. There's a bit of imposter syndrome that goes with this too, that you feel, especially like it's very, very synonymous with code, right? I have these weird feelings about code sometimes, and I feel like I'm not a real developer. I'm not going to be good enough to be like a senior level developer or anything like that, right? I have the same thing when it comes to YouTube. I thought when I hit 1,000 subscribers, I would feel like a YouTuber and not feel weird about carrying a camera around in public. And here at 9,500 subscribers, I still have a little bit of a weirdness. Like it's just a weird concept, right? It's hard to get over to be able to carry a camera around, and it's a lot easier when you're Casey Neistat and you make a full-time living off of this. So I don't know. Maybe when I hit that 10K number, it'll feel better or different, or I don't know. I don't know what the number is that we're searching for really, but. Hot Lana, 10 p.m. in London. Ashton, that's awesome. I work with a lot of people in London, so I understand the time zone difference because sometimes I have to wake up at like way too early to get on the call at 6 a.m. with people over in Europe or South Africa. Larry's 4 o'clock. Luis is 3 o'clock, 4 p.m. in Chicago. I love Chicago. Jose, I love Chicago. I have a couple of friends, a couple of really close friends from college who live in Chicago and used to go up there fairly regularly. So 11 in Norway. Richard, strong EU contention and Richard codes. That's awesome though, man. Jay Lotto coming in with the first question. Hot. How long did it take you to learn JavaScript? I still haven't learned JavaScript completely. There's still things that I don't know. There are still things that I have to look up. But to get to the point where I could build some pretty simple stuff with JavaScript, it was full-time. So I don't know if you guys saw my video yesterday about projects that you can build in web development, and I mentioned something. There was a JavaScript memory game, and that was the first project that I built with JavaScript. I'm pretty sure, and that was essentially a week's worth of experience in JavaScript. We built a memory game, and we had previously built the game out with HTML and CSS. And using CSS checkboxes, and the functionality didn't work to like check to see if things matched, but the like flipping part of it. So we didn't have to figure that out. But a week of essentially, 8 to 10 to 12-hour days, we built out that memory game. And then obviously, like we were in the boot camp for 12 weeks, and I got a job working with JavaScript after that. It's really going to depend on how much time you can spend on a day-to-day basis, how quickly you're going to learn it. But there's no reason to think that you couldn't be like junior level job ready in a few months to half a year to a year, depending upon how long you can spend like really, really diving deep into JavaScript. If you can make it like a full-time job, you can do it in a few months to be junior level job ready, to be a web developer. South Africa, that is right, Lorenz. South Africa, coming in hot. Cool cutie, what's up? From Canada, the Canadian land. Do you speak French, cool cutie? I don't. Je ne parle pas français. That's about all I know. I took 3 years of it in high school, so. Should I put everything on GitHub, even my unfinished projects? Yeah, so, oh, Coder Store, I missed you. What is up, Coder Store? Actually, you guys, if you don't know, JC, I promise I'm going to answer your question, but if you don't know, the Coder Store, I think it's the coder.store on Instagram, correct me if I'm wrong there, they are a new shop, t-shirt shop that does coding like t-shirts and swag, and I ordered my first one 3 days ago. I just ordered a shirt from them. They've got some really cool shirts, so go check them out on Instagram. The Coder Store, put your Instagram handle in the chat for the people to find you. But JC, should I put everything on GitHub, even my unfinished projects? So you should be using GitHub as a place for version control, which means that you should be pushing to GitHub every so often to make sure that you don't lose your code. You shouldn't think of your GitHub. Okay, trying to think of how to answer this in the best way. There's 2 strategies with GitHub, and you can feel free to have 2 different GitHub portfolio or 2 different GitHub users, right? One, the first type is going to be your everyday GitHub user, and you can use that when you put out your resume and stuff like that and show them your regular everyday GitHub. And with that, you should be using unfinished projects because you're using it as version control. You're using GitHub as a repository to hold your code so that you don't lose it in the event of something catastrophic happening to your code or to your computer. Then the other option is if you're a little worried about putting incomplete code, or if you're like me and you put ridiculous things in your code like weird console log messages and stuff just for like sanity checks, which I do, which is may not be the best thing. If somebody dove like really deep and found one of those, right? You could have like a professional GitHub profile where you take the projects that you use on your everyday and you push those to that professional GitHub profile and use that on your resume and share that with your potential like employers. And that way you have something that they're all finished projects, the code is cleaned up, the comments are cleaned up, the console logs are cleaned up, and they're like actual like ready-made apps for you. Just making sure that we're still live because I had an issue last week where it went out at the very beginning. So that's an option for you, really. Let me know if that makes sense, if I explained that well, because I kind of came up with that on the fly. I never really thought about that before, but I think that would be a really good strategy. Chris Moore, a friend of mine, just turned me onto your channel. I'm really liking the content so far. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you very much. And for the people who are new here or new in the chat or new in the live stream, feel free to let me know in the chat when you guys found the channel because I'm super interested. I was just saying at the very beginning of the stream, something happened today and the channel seems to be blowing up, which I'm super grateful for. Picked up like 100 new subscribers so far today, which is wild. I'm just kind of wondering what all happened. But thanks, Chris. I'm glad you're around. Stick around. Feel free to ask any questions or shout anything out that you want to talk about. These live streams are really developer based, but we can talk about anything. We've talked about music. We've talked about basketball. Big game tonight. Go Cavs. Also, Ramsey's not here, which is shocking. But for Ramsey, congratulations with your Rockets yesterday. Unfortunate. But yeah, feel free to talk about anything, guys. Haven't coded in like 2 weeks, lost the motivation for it. I can't come up with my own projects, but if I have a set of instructions to follow, I can build it. Yeah, Big Tides, that's totally, I totally understand that, right? The creative side of this isn't necessarily everybody's cup of tea, and it doesn't have to be. Programming doesn't have to be a completely creative pursuit. Look up, like I just did a video on project ideas. Now, there aren't like really firm sets of instructions that I gave you, right? I didn't come up with user stories and say this is exactly how it should function or this is not how it should function. But there are places that do that. Use Google. It's your best friend. They will give you ideas for projects like really well. There's a ton of articles about it, a ton. Am I familiar with semantic UI? Larry G, are you like semantic HTML? Like using article for an article as opposed to just big div tags? If that's what you're talking about, I do know. I do know. If semantic UI is like a library, I don't know it. 5 p.m. in Michigan. That's what's up, Donovan. Although our rivalry still continues. Go Bucks. What should be the true roadmap to web development? White Knight. It depends. Do you want to do front end, back end? Do you want to do websites and things like websites and freelance and doing like WordPress web development, or are you wanting to do front end web development and work on web apps? There's a bunch of different kind of categories when it comes to all of this, and it's dependent upon that. If you're talking about front end web development for web apps, it's HTML, learn CSS, get really good at those, learn JavaScript, learn vanilla JavaScript, learn ES6, the newest, best, greatest syntax, the bleeding edge technology, people say. I hate that term, by the way. We had a funny story at my time at the boot camp about bleeding edge technology. I hate saying it, but it's what people refer to it as, so I use it. And then find out framework that you like that's employable in your area, Angular, React, possibly Vue, and learn that. That's the roadmap. Thank you from Paris, all the way from Paris. Another French speaker. You missed my real quick French talk at the very, very beginning of the stream. So I don't want to offend your ears. Are employers going to care if you have a repo with no commit history? I would assume not. I would assume that they're going to take it as it's your work. It's one of those things, though, if you're worried about putting unfinished projects, or if you're worried about kind of what's going to be in the comments of the code and that sort of thing, it's going to be your best workaround. Because even if you only have one profile and you aren't putting unfinished work in there, you're only going to be committing when it's finished. So you're really not going to have any commit history there either. Took web design class this spring in university and did very well, but all of our projects still looked like websites from the early 2000s. Are Udemy type projects more up to date and styled? Absolutely. Both of the Udemy courses on React that I recommend are modern. They're modern looking apps that you build throughout them. So those are like the Andrew Mead and Stephen Grider React courses. You can find a link to those in most of my videos other than the live streams. And yeah, they're going to be modern looking apps. They're going to use either like a CSS framework like Bootstrap, or they're going to be using Sass, and it's going to look not like from the 2000s, not like it's a GeoCities page. It'll be on point. Bonnaroo. Yes, guys, in 2 weeks from today. So I'll be doing a regular live stream next week, and then the week after that, it's going to be tricky. I'm still going to try to stream, but I'm not sure at what time, and I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to pull it off because cell phone service might be an issue. But I will be at Bonnaroo in 2 weeks, which is super exciting, with my father, who's a big music person. Hopefully I'll be able to do a live stream, maybe in the car while we're waiting to get inside a little bit later on in the day when the sun's still out. So, lighting works. It'll be through my cell phone. It'll be weird. It'll be awkward. It may only last like 15 minutes. I don't know. We'll see. But I do want to do a stream 2 weeks from now. Next week will be normal. 2 weeks from now will be weird. And then the week after that, so 2 weeks, Wednesday, that'll be weird. The week after that, I'm going to be in San Francisco, and there almost assuredly won't be a Wednesday live stream because I'm going to be there for work. So it's like Bootstrap. Check them out. Okay, I think I maybe have heard of Semantic UI. Let me see. I don't know if I see the website. Semantic UI. User interface is the language of the web. It's very simple. I like it. It's super clean. I don't hate anything about Semantic UI. It's pretty cool. That's from a 30-second look at the website, but it looks pretty nice. I have not tried Bulma CSS. I want to check it out. No, my new love, my new obsession is Gatsby for static site generation with React. So that's my newest, greatest love or passion when it comes to front-end tooling and front-end framework type things. I'm learning JavaScript, but I don't want to forget HTML, CSS. Been learning 5 months now, but JavaScript 2 to 3 months, and it's been kicking my butt. Yeah, for sure. JavaScript's hard. It's the hardest part of front-end web development when it comes to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? Don't be afraid to build projects with all three, because that's how websites are made. That would be my recommendation for not forgetting HTML and CSS. Make more semantic sense than Bootstrap. That's good because Bootstrap's naming convention is terrible, but It's popular. Would you recommend Team Treehouse basic plan for front-end dev track and where I can find project ideas to build while learning to code because their tech degree is a bit expensive for me? Yeah, so the front-end, like the basic plan is what Chris Sean used to get a job. It'll teach you the basics, and then I would suggest if you're wanting to dive deep into something, if you're wanting to really get down in the weeds of JavaScript, you can buy a couple of different Udemy courses, whether that's for like a framework like React or like JavaScript Understanding the Weird Parts, which is a Udemy course. You can check out Wes Boss's free JavaScript 30 course, which is really good. But use Treehouse for the basics, knock those out, finish those up, and then dive a little deeper with a little bit deeper courses. Now, their tech degree programs may be a little bit more in depth, which is really cool. I just haven't had the opportunity to try them yet. They are expensive, and at this point, I don't know if that money is worth it for me to spend, as opposed to going and buying like a very specialized Udemy course for what it is I want to learn. I push to my GitHub code alongs I do in courses. I don't really have skills yet to do my own projects yet. See, you may think that, oh, I missed your chat, Larry, but I'll get to it in a second. You may think that you don't have the skills to build your own projects yet, right? And I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. When I was at the boot camp, there was a cycle that we went through. And this cycle was essentially you would learn something in class in the morning, and then you'd get your project that was homework. And it would either be for one night and you'd have to have it done by the next morning, or if it was the weekend, you'd have the weekend to do it and it'd be done by Monday morning. And you'd get taught this thing in class that was kind of relevant. And then you'd get a project, and that project would come up on the screen and we'd see, oh man, what is this? What is it going to be? And then we would just get scared. Like there was this brief moment or long moment, depending upon the project, where legitimately my brain thought, oh shit, there's no way that I'm going to be able to pull this off in less than 24 hours or in less than 3 days. There's just no way. I'm not going to be able to do it. The thing is that you probably have more skills than what you realize. You probably have the ability to do things better than you realize, and you just haven't found the practical application of the skills that you have yet, right? It's easy to learn your first for loop, or it's hard. It doesn't matter. But once you learn a for loop, you have the knowledge to do a for loop. Now, the thing is that if you don't know that you can use a for loop to loop through data, through a set of data, a set of things, and then use that for loop and then use something to append that stuff inside of the DOM and display a list of things from a set of data, if you don't know that, then you don't know you have that skill. But you know how to write a for loop, which means you have the skill to do it. You have the backend, or you have the JavaScript knowledge to be able to do it. You just don't have the practical application to be able to put it there. So if you can think of the way to word questions to get the project done and find them on Google, and then you see an answer that says, hey, use a for loop, and you know how to use a for loop, then you're 50% there, and that's good. Larry asks, what command line do you use? So I use zshell, oh my zsh, for Mac. Like I'm on a Mac, and I use zsh, ZSH, oh my zsh. Is Gulp still viable? I haven't used Gulp in a long time, and I don't know a lot of people who do anymore. My front-end tooling right now is typically going to be Create React App, which comes baked with NPM, I can't think of things, NPM and Webpack. And that's what I'm using for my front-end tooling. I used Gulp for one project way back in the day when I was at the boot camp, and I just haven't used it in a long time. If JavaScript doesn't kick your butt, are you human? Are you human or are you dancers, Richard? I don't know. Yeah, JavaScript is an interesting language. It's not the easiest language to pick up for your first language. That's why people usually recommend things like Ruby on Rails or Python to learn first, because they're just easier to read, easier to make sense. They don't have things like prototypical inheritance, which is a weird thing to think about. But JavaScript was written in what, like 10 days or something? The guy wrote the entire language in 10 days. It's got its oddities. It's got its interesting quirks for sure. So thank you, Donovan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome, Stubborn Cajun. You're welcome. Where can I find a complete course on CSS? I want to master flexboxes and grid and animation. Victor, I have just the place for you. So WesBoss, WESBOS, has a series of courses on both Flexbox and CSS Grid, and they are completely free. And WesBoss, as his name implies, is an absolute and total boss when it comes to teaching front-end stuff. I would recommend buying his courses. They are expensive. They're more expensive than Udemy courses, but the guy is just a really good teacher. He has a really good energy about him. You can tell that he's passionate about this. You can tell that he's just like, in that he's not demeaning. He doesn't try to like make you feel small or stupid. Like, he's a really, really good teacher. So if you haven't and you want to find out things about Flexbox and CSS Grid, both of those courses are free. WesBoss, WESBOS. I've heard you recommend some courses and websites, but have you ever used the Big O'Reilly or Apress books? I find them to be more deep divey than the courses I've taken on Udemy. Yeah, I haven't particularly, like, it's not something that I've dove deep into, but I have flipped through a few different books on things like JavaScript, and they do tend to be a little bit more technical. They tend to be more, sorry for the pun, textbookish, right, than Udemy courses. Udemy courses tend to be more practical application. Like, this is how you're going to build a weather app with React, right? And they don't dive into the technical aspects as much, or they gloss it over. And it kind of depends on what your learning style is, where you're at in your mind for how you want to learn, what you want to learn, and what you're trying to accomplish with the skills that you need. I think a good mixture of both is probably really good. The book that I do recommend that I have read through is Eloquent JavaScript, and it's a very, very mundane, boring, I mean, it's not like written to be a novel, right? It's not Game of Thrones, but it is very, very smartly written. It's completely free online, eloquentjavascript.com, .org, .net, something like that. It's completely free though. Just search Eloquent JavaScript. And it's useful and powerful, and it can really help you out a lot. Eslam asking the hard questions. Do I need to learn jQuery in 2018? It's really, really, really dependent upon what kind of job you want to do, what your market is like, what kind of jobs are available for junior developers in the market. jQuery is a useful skill to have because there is still you've got to think about jQuery was the most popular library for JavaScript for essentially like almost a decade. Like, it's a long time. jQuery's been around for a long time, and it was really, really popular for a really long time. So that means a bunch of people wrote a lot of code in jQuery. So there are a lot of code bases that have jQuery in them. And it's a useful skill to know that, especially if there are jQuery jobs in your area. There are still jQuery jobs. There are still places that write and make websites that are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but with jQuery layered on top of it. So it is a useful skill. It's not a completely useless skill. The thing about jQuery, the reason why people say jQuery is dead is if you're trying to make Facebook today, or if you're trying to make Instagram, if you're trying to make a web application, not just a website, you're almost always not going to use jQuery. And it's definitely not going to be the basis of the app. What you're going to use is something like React or Angular or something like that. And so that's why people say jQuery is dead. For app building, for web app building, jQuery is not the most useful tool anymore. But is it not worth it to learn? I don't think so. It's not as important as it was 5 years ago, or probably even 2 years ago, but it can still be a useful skill. And once you have like a good grasp on JavaScript, jQuery is pretty easy to pick up because it makes things a little bit easier to understand, and it makes doing one particular thing take less steps. But okay, so the Coder Store makes a good point. They suggest learning JavaScript and then pick a framework, Angular, React, etc. I agree, with a caveat. If you're in an area where all of the jobs are website development jobs, or if you're in an area that has lots of really old code bases that are going to be jQuery, it's a little bit behind the times. They don't move at the speed of Silicon Valley as much. Then jQuery is still a useful tool to pick up, because not everywhere is Silicon Valley. Not everywhere is the triangle where I live, where there's a lot of startups here, and there's a lot of like really fast turnover when it comes to these sorts of things, and people pivot and that sort of stuff. That's my one caveat. It's really going to depend where you are. I equate writing a program to sometimes like writing a paper. Starting can be so daunting, but once you start writing, it flows easier sometimes. Absolutely. I think that's a really good, it's a really good analogy, and writer's block equals blockers. And why is this code not compiling, or why is this code not working? For sure. The cool thing about programming as opposed to papers are that when you get to a set of problems, when you get to a set of roadblocks, there's usually at least something tangentially related on Stack Overflow that can help you get past it. My sign is vital. I don't know what that means. Hi, I started working in this company this week. It's my first job ever, and I just finished high school this year. They let me in production code first day. I don't really know everything they use. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have an awesome opportunity. Congratulations on starting the new job. Good luck with it. What's my advice? I would say just keep trucking. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't feel like you don't belong there because you don't know everything, because they gave you an opportunity for a reason. Don't feel like you don't belong there because you're young. They gave you an opportunity for a reason. I'm assuming they're pretty smart people and they see something in you, so don't get bogged down by it. As far as the technical stuff, ask questions. Don't be afraid to admit you don't know something and learn it. And also make sure that you take the time to try to take your time to fail, and fail eloquently by looking up things on Stack Overflow and Google and stuff like that. Thanks, Andres. I think I said that right. Thanks, Andres. I appreciate it, man. Hey, Aaron, how's it going? What's up from Seattle? Lovely Seattle. Lovely West Coast time. I still have to get to Seattle. I'd recommend learning jQuery. I'm using it at my job, mostly using it for quick prototyping. Yeah, there are a lot of people that still use jQuery every day, man. In South Africa, I see a lot of jQuery jobs here in my country. That makes sense. I don't know. Yeah, so my company has an office in South Africa, obviously, and I don't think they use jQuery at all there, but especially in places that are not on the cutting edge, jQuery is going to be around, and it's going to be around a lot. Absolutely, JC. Anytime. Let's see, we got 39 people in here. If you haven't already, this is my annoying reminder. If you haven't already, hit the like button. Hit the like button on this stream so more eyes can get on it. So I'm not ready for my first web dev job. My JS is very basic, but I did get offered an assistant marketing job, updating current website through CMS using social media, design, etc. This is a good stepping stone, or should I keep looking once I'm ready? So this is a tricky question, right? You're presented with a job opportunity that's in tech, which is part of what you want, but it's not exactly what you want to do because you're updating a website through a CMS and not really like programming, right? When you found out you were getting this job, did you let them know that you wanted to be a programmer? Do you trust them that they're going to give you the opportunity to be a developer in the future? And if not, are you the type of person who's going to be willing to pull the plug on a job after 6 months because you don't see that opportunity there? Don't get stuck in something just because it's the first job that you get offered and it's a tech job and there are some cool benefits and it pays pretty well. If your goal is to really take on programming and web development, it's not just to switch careers because you want a better job and you find out that this digital marketing job is kind of like really cool, and like if you really want to be a programmer and you're passionate about it and you want to create stuff and you want to be awesome at programming. And there's nothing wrong with the other thing, by the way. If you want to get into programming because you want a better job, there's nothing wrong with that either. But if you really want to be a programmer, you need to make yourself a promise if you take the job. And that promise is that if you are not getting closer to your goal of becoming a programmer at this particular company, then it's not a stepping stone anymore. It's a roadblock, and you need to be able to pull the plug on it and search for another opportunity in what you actually want to do. Don't let the first job you get, the first decent job you get, the first job with good benefits or whatever it is, stop you from maintaining the goals that you want because it's a change of pace for you. Thumbs up to you, the Coder Store. Absolutely, Islam. For sure, my man. If anyone in comments has any jobs where they transitioned into web dev from another job, let me know. I'd like to hear. So I used to work with a guy who transitioned from a data scientist job. He wasn't doing any real programming as a data scientist. He was just doing like big data analytics and stuff like that, into a programming job with Rails and Ruby on Rails through a like in-house programming course that they put on through the job that I was working at. And he transitioned, but he had been working at the company for a couple years, and there was nothing that was necessarily said like, you'll be a programmer one day. He just decided that he wanted to and was able to move. So, but I get simple tasks, I can't do them as fast as they want me to. It's really tilting. Absolutely. I understand that, man. I totally get that. It's frustrating. See if you can talk to like your boss and see what the expectation is, or if you can maybe have some time on like a weekly basis to pair program with somebody to like get hands-on like mentorship and stuff like that. Do you have somebody that you can go to and talk to about this sort of stuff? Like, did they pair you with a particular mentor or something like that? Because that would be really useful. Now I don't know what kind of shop you work at, so maybe it's not possible, but oh yeah, yeah, you're right, Chris. I see. I made that joke so long ago, and I just got caught up in the chat that I like totally forgot that. What's my coding schedule like? Depends on the day. Like there is no typical day. I made a video about this a little while back about what a typical day in the life of a developer is like. Like there are days where I spend like 5-6 hours in meetings. There are days where I spend almost 8 hours coding. There have been days where I've spent more than 8 hours coding. A lot of the time it's really broken up by meetings. So I start my day off with a meeting, I program for a little while, have another meeting, program for a little while. But I would say on average, probably when I'm just doing a developer role, 4 to 6 hours of coding, a couple of hours of meetings, a couple of hours of kind of soft skill stuff, replying to emails, talking to people, planning, that sort of stuff. And that's a normal day. Let's see, to be specific, in Pretoria area in South Africa, yeah, it requires jQuery. My company's office is in Cape Town, so a little bit of ways away from you. Cisco Guru 60. Do you work at Cisco Guru? Because if you do, we live in the same area. At least if you work at the one in Raleigh. What is up, man? Found my vlog and saw a live feed. Absolutely. Thanks for joining in, man. Thank you so much. Aaron, what do you think? How much CSS do you need to know to be a functional front-end dev? Is it enough to know how box model, float, flexbox, grid, and media query is working, or you need more, or you need much more? Tongue twisting from Annabis's question. So I would say, so if you know box model, float, flexbox, grid, and media query, you pretty much know all of the really important stuff to know with CSS. The big thing that you'd be missing there would be like CSS animations and transitions, which a lot of people don't use all that often. Here and there, there'll be like some rotations and stuff like that, or a fade in, fade out. A lot of people use other libraries for that as well. But if you know box model, float, flexbox, grid, and media queries, CSS positioning is really the most important thing, right? Do you know how to position something and not have it bleed off the edge? And media queries for responsive website development, those are going to be really, really good skills. And that is a very, 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 very solid baseline of things to be functional as a front-end developer with CSS. I personally didn't know Flexbox when I first started doing this. Flexbox was a very, very new concept though, and so I didn't have any Flexbox experience, and I'd worked with a grid system similar to Bootstrap. It's called Foundation, but not CSS Grid itself because it hadn't been a thing yet. I'm a network operations monkey, routers and switches. I've been in this for a long time. I feel burned out and was exploring web development. That's awesome, man. Feel free to come check out the channel, and feel free to ask any questions you have about it whenever they come up in the comments here on live streams. I do these Wednesday at 5 for the foreseeable future. So yeah. Aaron, what FTP client do you use? In the past, I've used FileZilla. I don't really use one anymore. We do some stuff. Okay, so FileZilla is what I've used in the past. Patrick cosigns on FileZilla. Yeah. Coder story, sorry. Oh, I see. You guys are talking to one another, not talking to me anymore. Well, that's cool. Have your private conversation in my chat. Coder story and Richard. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I use FileZilla. Why? What do you need it for? What you need in an FTP client felt? I think he's not in the chat right now. Robert Fish. Oh man, what is his channel name? Coding for All, Coding for Everyone. Robert Fish is his name on like Instagram. Robert Fish, web. Oh God, I'm gonna ruin this. I'm gonna look it up. But he just put a video out not too long ago about an IDE, similar to like Atom or something, that has an FTP client baked into it. I didn't quite understand. Yeah, it's Real Robert Fish on Instagram. He put up a video about it. It was I forget what the IDE's name was called, but it was an interesting concept at least. Which text editor do I use? I use VS Code. I was an Atom guy for a really long time, but I switched over to VS Code because we use TypeScript at work, and VS Code comes out of the box with a really good TypeScript linter, and by really good I mean really annoying, but you know, TypeScript, right? I forgot another semicolon, or I didn't put the white space in right, or whatever TypeScript is complaining about. I was in college for a CS degree. I have experience building applets in Java with the Eclipse IDE. The course was mainly on sorting algorithms and parsing information. Any project ideas I could do in Java? I really don't know. I'm not a big. I don't know much about Java. Your big things with Java right now, obviously, like Android development via Java. You can build backends with Java, build an API, Java API. But if you're a Java developer, what title should you apply for? I mean, Java developer is a pretty common search term, and then backend developer with Java experience, obviously. Those are going to be the big ones, at least where I am. You're welcome, my man. Is it easy to find freelance work in web development right now? Machine, it's hard for me to tell you because I haven't actually looked for it. Although a lot of people tell you can do it. If you look on YouTube, a lot of people say you can do it and that it's not too hard. Everybody needs a website, though. Everything is on the internet. So it's going to be a matter of either doing one of those websites, Upworks, those kind of things, and trying to find it that way, or going out in the real world in your local area and hustling and trying to get businesses to sign up for your web design work and web development work. Is it easy? It's I don't know if it's easy. Is it doable? Probably. But I think it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hustling for sure. How often do I use Bootstrap? I never use Bootstrap personally. I think there are other CSS frameworks that are better, like Foundation, although I haven't used Foundation in a long time either. I tend to, because I think of myself as a creative person, I try to come up with my own UI elements and stuff like that. Although when I do need to use a UI toolset, I've been using Material Design and MDL, Material Design Lite, in the recent months. Just wondering, I have Transmit and Cyberduck. Wondered if they're, yeah, I have not used either of those, so I don't know if it's better, but it's what I've used. I think I used it because I found out I needed it and had recently saw an advertisement for it, which is probably not the best reason, but it also shows that their advertising worked. Also, Richard, fun fact, my OBS, Richard and I were talking about something privately, so I'm going to bring it up here on the live stream because I never actually replied to him because I'm a bad person. My OBS doesn't have a window capture for Skype, regardless of how I open Skype. It's really, really, really weird. Do you have an example of your portfolio that got you your first job? I do not anymore. I used to have a portfolio up and about, and it was taken down because it was not great. I got my first job because I wrote a really good cover letter. My portfolio was good enough. The bootcamp that I went to in the area that I'm in is really well known to produce good talent. And I gave a good interview. I did good on the coding challenge. And that's why I got my first job. It wasn't my portfolio for sure. I live in Whiteville, NC. Whiteville. I think I drive through that to get to Ohio. When I go there, I definitely drive through a Whiteville or Whitville. I don't know how you pronounce it, but that's awesome, man. Fellow North Carolinian here, and I started computer programming by enlisting in a Udemy course for a front-end web developer in the beginning of this year. Is Raleigh a good area to work in your opinion? Absolutely. Raleigh is huge for programming right now. I mean, it's blossoming. It sucks because certain things are going up in price, like houses, which sucks. But salaries are good. Opportunities are good. There's a ton of places, ton of small little startups, ton of medium-sized companies, and a ton of big companies. So it is a growing industry here. It's great for it. C, I know nothing about CJC, so if you're asking me about C, I have no opinion. I've heard mixed things about C. How do you feel about reaching out to small local companies like restaurants and offering them a site redesign? Yeah, that's how most people tell you should do it, right? Most people say that you have to go out and hustle to like local places and be like, hey, your website sucks. I can make you something better. Look what I've done. Or, hey, you don't have a website and you're losing money because of it. Look what I can do. That's kind of the hustle of freelance web development in 2018, from what I understand. Sublime Text sucks are not bad for free. It's not bad if you're using a free text editor. I was always an Atom over Sublime kind of guy, although Atom can get a little bit clunky at times. I always liked it. Sublime is, unless they released it for free completely, actually free, they're one of those things that it's free, but they're going to pop up and ask for you to like give them money every so often. Yeah, the Spring framework with Java for APIs and backends. That is a lot of jobs in Raleigh for sure. I've been learning front end for about 8 months now and want to get my portfolio in a good state. What are the most important skills employers are likely to be looking for? So they're going to be looking for people who know modern development typically, which is going to be JavaScript ES6. They're going to be looking for a responsive portfolio. Make sure your portfolio is responsive. Don't give them a portfolio that only looks good on your particular computer and no one else's computer. They're going to be looking for JavaScript skills and probably a framework if you're looking to do web apps. Yeah, something like React or Angular for sure. Java annoys a lot of people apparently. Never really played around with it. Donovan just got home from work, about to eat dinner and continue to work on my new portfolio. Take care of myself. Yes, sir. Donovan, have a good night. Enjoy your dinner. I've still got like 2 hours before I eat. But have a good one. Actually, a full stack Java developer. If you haven't picked a framework already, I would suggest to learn Spring Framework and use Spring Boot with it. There are good job opportunities. Yeah, Spring is like Spring is super popular if you're learning Java. That's awesome though, Coder. I didn't know that the Coder Store. I didn't know that you were a full stack Java developer. That's pretty dope. Where are you based out of? Did my stream just go out? Oh no, my stream went out. No. I think I'm back up though. I don't know what happened there. Probably my wife using up all my Wi-Fis. The last thing that I said was about the Coder Stores responding to Red Dragon. Don't know if you heard that, but best way to start with React. You can go through like a React tutorial on YouTube. Pretty sure Travis Ray Media has one. The way that I started with React was to buy Andrew Mead's course on Udemy. I haven't linked in all of my videos except for the live stream. So if you go to one of my older videos, there's a link down in the description to Andrew Mead's React course. That was my first intro into React and the world of Redux. Yeah, if you click on that link, as always, disclaimer, I get paid a little bit of commission off of it. It is an affiliate link. Why does Java annoy you? Java, I feel like some people get annoyed by Java because it's an older language and it comes with a lot of older language baggage, and it has a bad rep for being hard to learn or cumbersome to learn, I guess. I think that's why it annoys a lot of people. Ramsey, what is up? Congratulations on the Houston Rockets win last night, my dude. They were playing out of their minds, man. Out of their minds, absolutely. Libraries are overwhelming and frameworks are overwhelming. Yeah, it's definitely a big task to learn. You know, you get over the hump of learning JavaScript and then they're like, hey, here's a framework, figure it out. But it's absolutely doable. PHP Storm. Never played around with it. I am struggling with JavaScript. Do you feel learning strings, arrays, functions, and all that annoying stuff will help with other languages as well, like Python for data science? So the thing about computer like programming languages is that they're all going to be marginally related, right? So learning string and array functions and all of that stuff in one language is definitely going to be like you're going to be able to see patterns in other languages. So it'll make the learning curve for those new languages less. The cool thing about learning JavaScript first and then moving to a language like Python is that Python is way easier to learn out of the box. So you're already going to be a step up. And then you're going to look back at JavaScript and be like, JavaScript, why are you so stupid? But JavaScript is also awesome and super duper powerful. I'm sorry I left, Richard. I'm sorry. Is learning Google's App Engine a waste of time right now? I don't have a good answer for that, my man. Google's App Engine, what that is. Let's do some live research. Is this that like Google script stuff that is a web framework and cloud computing platform for developing and hosting web applications in a Google managed data center? I've actually never seen it be used. So I don't know if it's a waste. It may be popular some places, but it's not anything that I have ever used myself. That's what's up, Cisco. I'll see you next week, my man. Oh no, LOL. No, I'm assuming these no's are about me dropping from the live stream. I'm guessing that's what it is. Backend Java Spring Framework and frontend with Angular. The Coder Store, why'd you pick Angular? What version of Angular are you on? Isn't 6 out now? Angular 6? I think that's a thing. I actually like the Java SE libraries, but the E stuff does look kind of intense for sure, man. jQuery worth learning anymore? Oh man, we just had this conversation, Liam. You're a little bit late. Although I will repeat in a little bit more condensed version what I said before. jQuery is going to be worth learning depending upon what part of the country or part of the world you're in and what skills are really useful where you are. It's also going to be worth learning if you're wanting to do like website work and you don't want to, muck up your world with a thing like Angular or React to make websites because you don't really need it. It's a bit of overkill. It's useful because there's a lot of code out there that was written in jQuery. It was the most popular library, framework, whatever you want to call it, for JavaScript for a really, 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 really long time, which means that a lot of people wrote a lot of code in jQuery. And it's useful to know if you get a job where you're going to have to look at jQuery code or where you have to write jQuery code in React. Now, if you're wanting to work at a place that's starting a new project now, they're probably not going to pick jQuery if it's a web application because there's a lot more useful things to build web apps now, like React and Redux or Vue or Angular. Those are all way better suited to build web applications as opposed to jQuery. So it's one of those things where you're going to need to do a little bit of market research and you're going to have to know kind of what kind of job you want. I try to break down web development in kind of 2.5, 3 flavors, right? There's web development where it's web app development, and then you're building web apps like Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and those kind of things. Those are web apps. They're not just websites. If you think about you go to like mom and pop local coffee shop, that's a website. There's not a ton of interaction. They may have like a newsletter. They may have some drop downs, menu clicks, things like that, a calendar widget, that sort of thing. But there's not a lot of interaction there. There's not a lot of like bells and whistles. That's a website. And then YouTube is a web app. There's a lot of data being shoved in from the back end to the front end, a lot of manipulation there. So there's those 2 flavors. And then with the website world, there's like regular website world. And then there's things like WordPress and Drupal, CMS website world, which is what most like of those businesses and stuff like that websites are. jQuery is super useful for website world. It's not as useful for web app world unless you're working on legacy code-based web app and there's jQuery baked in. I've been a graphic designer for 7 years. Will this help me get a job as a front-end developer? Having design skills is never a bad thing when it comes to front-end. Never, ever a bad thing. Having an eye for design, knowing colors, being able to come up with your own icons, that's super dope. There's no reason to think that it would be a hindrance, and it would definitely be a useful skill that you can speak to. And if you can wrap that graphic design skill into learning a little bit more about web design, then you kind of become the front-end unicorn, which is a front-end web designer and developer, a person who can come up with really, really dope designs because they are a designer and who can then go and build those. Like that's the front-end unicorn, my man. Udacity charges for their React course, but all of their free content is as legit as it gets. I need to do more Udacity research. I always kind of defer to Ricky Garcia when it comes to Udacity if somebody asks if they're good or bad, because he has a bunch of different videos about his time working with Udacity. Absolutely, Dominic. Absolutely, anytime, my man. We are getting pretty close to an hour on this stream. I am going to wrap this stream up right about 6 o'clock. So if you guys have any last minute questions, feel free to throw them in the chat now. Algorithms important for web developers. It depends on how you define algorithms. If you want to define algorithms as this big scary word, this big scary math word, that if you didn't take advanced math, you aren't going to be able to know how to do algorithms, then maybe not. Kind of, they are. I mean, algorithms are any kind of set of step-by-step instruction to figure out logical problems, right? So you are going to be writing algorithms, but in the sense that like if you need to make a tic-tac-toe game in JavaScript, the thing that you do to check to see if a win happens or a like loss happens, that's an algorithm. But algorithm is this big scary word. So they are important, but probably not in the way you think of them if that word intimidates you. Hey, Aaron, how is object-oriented programming and ES6 implemented for a dev? That's a really, really, really big question, Fazil, and it's hard for me to answer it in this setting, and I'd probably need to think about it more. So unfortunately, like I'm going to skip it. Object-oriented in ES6 doesn't change that much from ES5, although they did introduce the class syntax, but if you watch Fun Functions video on the class syntax, it's a fake class. Like it's not It's not really a class. He does a way better job of explaining that than I can because he has a way better technical mind than I do. He has way more experience in this. But it doesn't inherently change things. It actually kind of makes well, there are a lot of things. There are some things that it changes, but not as much as it changed the functional programming aspects of ES6 or JavaScript with the like filter and map and those sort of functions being implemented in JavaScript. So I'm sure that you had this question, how much do you need to know JavaScript before you start with some JavaScript frameworks? Depends on who you ask. My personal opinion is that you should have a really good grasp of vanilla JavaScript and you should be able to build out some pretty simple apps with vanilla JavaScript. If you can make like a memory game, if you can make like a quiz game with vanilla JavaScript, if you can fetch data from an API with vanilla JavaScript, then it's probably time where you can move on. Those are pretty like base level skills in JavaScript. There are other people out there recently that I've seen that have the actual kind of like opposite opinion of me, which is that you should do what makes you learn more faster and quicker, which their opinion is basically if you skip learning like all of the things that you need to know about JavaScript and move on to a framework, the framework provides a lot of useful tools and stuff, and it can be more fun to learn because you're like learning React, right? Which is what everybody kind of wants to get to, and they feel like JavaScript is like the remedial math version of calculus or whatever it is. I don't know the mindset that they're going after, but if you just jump into React right away, then you have that kind of like feeling about it, right? I'm personally of the belief that you should be able to build out some pretty cool stuff with vanilla JavaScript before you move on to React, because React isn't going to be forever, but JavaScript will be. So certain things are going to change with JavaScript piece by piece. Things with React change are a lot rapider, or React's not going to be around in 2 years, much like how Angular 1 wasn't around a couple years after it was introduced, and it was what everybody was writing code in for a really long time. So having that base layer of JavaScript understanding is going to serve you really, really well in the long run. I'm learning React and loving it. That's awesome, Castro. I also love React. I'm a React fanboy, evangelist, whatever you want to call it. I got a new hat. I haven't worn this hat in a video in a while. Sorry, I just peeped myself and saw that. I got a new, it's a 5-panel. Pretty excited about it. Anyways, turn it backwards again. What is up from Minnesota? Hello, Minnesota, home of the Vikings. I tend to rely on CSS frameworks like Bootstrap to build websites. What are some differences if I were to make sites with only CSS without the framework? Is it harder? So when you use a framework like Bootstrap, there are a bunch of pre-baked components, and it depends on how much Bootstrap you pull into your project, right? Are you only using Bootstrap for the grid system? If you're only using it for the grid system, then that's something that you'll have to roll yourself, either with CSS grid or by coming up with class names and widths and defining all of those things. Bootstrap also does a pretty good job if you're using their sort of syntax to make responsive websites really simply and quickly. If you aren't using Bootstrap, you're going to have to define your media queries and things like that on your own. Yeah, you're going to have to define your button styles. There's no primary color baked in. You're going to have to define your button widths and whether they have border radiuses. Is it harder? Maybe, because there's less predefined stuff. Is it more valuable? Like, will you learn more about CSS using just vanilla CSS? Absolutely. And it's worth it if you want to make something that's like really customized to what you want. Materialize versus Bootstrap, what are the pros and cons? That's not a good, it's not a, God, I haven't looked at Materialize in a while, or as much of the new Bootstrap as I would really like to. Materialize is just the material design framework. The problem that I have is that, okay, so Bootstrap is just a little bit more, I don't know, it's like the bad buzzword in the industry, right? Like 2 or 3 years ago, Bootstrap was considered like super generic, and it probably still is. It was the most popular thing in a while, so people pick Materialize over it because it's a little bit more hip. For me personally, I picked Materialize to work on a project recently, only because it was what was told that I should use. It wasn't like a personal project, it was something that I was building for a company. So where can I start if I want to be a backend developer? Big fan of the channel. Thank you, Ali. Thank you so much. Where do you want to start if you want to be a backend developer? Well, You're going to need a backend language skill, something like PHP or Ruby, Java, Python, those kind of things. I don't know much about backend. I'm not a backend developer. You could use Node if you already know a little bit of JavaScript. You can use Node, and yeah, just start working through some courses on it. Learn some skills, learn the basics, learn how to create variables and create loops and do those sorts of things. And yeah, a lot of useful things are like building out simple APIs for a project idea. Build out an API that stores something that you're interested in. If you're into books, build a library API or something like that. Then you can use a front end framework for whatever like skill you decide to pick. Like if you're using, or like a web framework. So if you're using something like Python, you could use Django, build out your back end side, and then have like a library app or something like that. Binary search trees, recursion, etc., runtime analysis. JC, what you talking about? You just throwing out buzzwords, my man. Recursion. What's up with companies wanting developers of CMS like WordPress and Drupal? What do you mean what's up with it? It's a skill that people need, right? There's a WordPress websites out there. There's a lot of Drupal websites, and you still have to program those. You still have to like those templates don't just happen. People are building those, and they're building those with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and PHP. So typically, that's what those things are going to be. Those jobs are going to be. They're going to be living inside of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP. You can make good money being a WordPress developer. What is up, Aaron? Same name, great name, Aaron. Yeah, it just takes longer. It's not necessarily harder. It's a little bit harder with positioning because you don't have the positioning like built in like you do. Talking about like, is using Bootstrap easier or harder than using no framework to write your CSS? ES6 class is just syntactic sugar for the usual JavaScript inheritance constructs. Absolutely. It's not really a class, but they want to make you feel like you're cool and OOP-ing it up. What is up, Marios? Late to the stream today, I see. What is up, my man? C++ to web programming, any advice? No, I don't know the first thing about C++, my dude. But, you know, you already have a head start on understanding programming. There's not going to be a whole lot of things that are different other than like things that are specific to the web, backend server things, security things with the internet, things like that. But programming is programming. You're going to be running loops. You're going to be manipulating data. You're going to be doing that sort of stuff. So HTML, CSS, and JavaScript if you're on the front end. Pick a backend language if you want to do the backend stuff, or do it all and be full stack. When should I worry about learning Redux if I'm currently learning React? Will bringing it in early be good or just confuse me even more? So the thing about Redux is that it is a bear to learn. The learning curve is very steep, and then it's one of those things where like you go straight up and then it clicks and you get it. This is a really good question because the way that I learned it was baked into like React Udemy courses, and they introduced it after building out kind of the first project in React. So I had a base layer of understanding of React, and then they brought in Redux, and then I got really confused. I felt like I had to rewatch a couple of videos a couple of times because it is a different way of thinking about things. It turns React a bit on its head, a little bit, from its like built-in state management solution. What I would suggest is be able to build some projects in React, simple projects with state management built into React with its like built-in this .set state. Do that for a project or two, and then look into Redux. And if you feel like your React skills aren't up to par to be able to pull it off, then maybe dial it back a little bit. But Redux is a really important skill to have for state management and stuff like that. Get a good understanding of pointers. I'm assuming this is a C++ thing. I don't know. Bootstrap has changed, man. It took me a while to get at it again. Never use this stuff nowadays. Yeah, dude, I am sure that if I looked at Bootstrap right now, I remember looking at it probably about 6 months ago and being like, oh, God, what's going on here? But with like the invention of, or the implementation of Flexbox and CSS Grid, it's gotten less needed to make simple like grid systems and stuff like that, although CSS Grid and Flexbox don't have the coverage, the browser coverage of something like Bootstrap would. Hello, the demon lover demons. You are new. Well, welcome. Welcome to the Aaron and Beta community, my dude. I am assuming there are some people here who are new, and if you are, feel free to shout it out in the chat. I've got a lot of new subscribers today, and it's buck wild. It's the third time I've mentioned that on the stream. It might not be the last. Have you ever thought to learn Android development? Marios, I've actually done some React Native stuff so you're using React, but it compiles down to actual native apps, both in Java and Swift, which is really cool. Have I thought about doing like actual native Android development with Java? Not really. I'm going to do a video here really soon on PWAs, progressive web apps, and I think that native app development might be becoming less and less popular in the near future, or at least that's what Google tells me to think, so I have to believe them, right? But if you don't know anything about progressive web apps, feel free to look that up. I'll also be doing a video on it in the next couple of weeks. I have filmed a progressive web app video twice and completely hated how it turned out both times and deleted it. That's a fun fact. Ideas on how to make money while teaching yourself web dev front end. Like to make money with the skills that you're learning on web development. Because that's going to be hard. If you don't have the skills to be able to charge people money for it, then I wouldn't suggest like putting your name out there to try to do freelance, because you don't want to get a bad rep. You don't want to be getting bad hits for your name on Google and stuff like that. I don't really know what kinds of questions to ask here. First, don't think of yourself as a noob. Revisualize. You don't have to ask questions. You can just say hi. You can also ask any question you want. If you want to ask about dinner, you can ask whatever you want, my man. Are you guys happy? I put on a collared shirt for you today. Do you see this? It's got little bicycles on it. I can't wear this shirt out in public anymore because it has a tear on the back. It's sewed up, but it still looks kind of goofy. I tore it on a fence in Lebanon. Like Lebanon, the country, not like a city. Lebanon. I was there last summer, like this time of year last year I was in Lebanon and tore this shirt. And it's sad because I love this shirt. It's got bikes on it. I like bikes. That's what's up, Daryl. Welcome to the family. Kramus, welcome. How's it going? Have you thought about learning Java instead? It's easier to learn if you are just starting out because it handles all the memory management aspects of coding for you. Absolutely, Red Dragon, you are on point. If you're talking about C++ versus Java, Java's a lot easier. It's one of the few times you can say Java's easier than something, though. But Trevor, what is up, my man? First time joining, loving the content so far. Thank you so much. Super quick question for you. What did you do in the week or a few days before your first interview? Any overall review resources? Honestly, so the first thing that I did when I graduated from the boot camp was bought a Udemy course on the recommendation of someone who I had a speed interview with when I was at the boot camp. And that Udemy course was JavaScript, Understanding the Weird Parts. So when we teach ourselves code online, a lot of times we buy Udemy courses that are very practical and they teach you how to build applications. And that's great. I love learning that way. But you do miss a bit of the puzzle there. And the missing puzzle piece is kind of the like under the hood, actual practical application of JavaScript. Actually like understanding how it functions under the hood, what the browser actually thinks of when it sees JavaScript code. And so I bought that course and I worked through it, and it's intense. It's heavy because we're talking about like actual computer science here along with programming. But that was the first thing that I did, and it actually helped me out a lot for technical interviews and technical questions, because a lot of times you're going to be talking to people who have CS backgrounds, and they'll want to ask you technical questions about like prototypical inheritance again, or things like that, like hoisting in JavaScript and stuff like that. And being able to speak to how it actually functions and not just kind of a vague understanding of it is super duper useful. I thought to check out a React Native after learning some React. Yeah, for sure. React Native is super useful. It's super nice. After you know React, it's really easy to pick up. Are you planning on staying within the realm of frontend, or are you planning on learning general purpose language and branching into other areas of software? So I think that the next thing that I really, really want to learn, the next big skill that I want to pick up, like I'm learning Gatsby right now, but that's a small skill for me. It's based in React, and I'm just learning how to hit the right buttons to make Gatsby work in the Gatsby way, right? The next big thing that I want to take on is learning Python. Just because of the popularity of it. Yeah, the popularity of it is super useful for me. So I'm going to be wrapping up the stream here in a couple minutes. I'm going to try to get through these last questions that have already been put in the chat. But just so you guys know, it'll only be a few more minutes on this live stream. But yeah, I think Python is my next step. Is it hard to get a remote job, or are they rare? I would say it's harder to get a remote job as a junior, and they're more rare than in-person jobs, but they are possible. Although for me personally, and this is just my personal opinion and the way that my brain works and the way that I function, I have found it to be way more useful for your first job to be a in-person position, because there's something about in-person interaction when you're learning, when you're getting mentored and stuff like that, that just works better for me. It may not work better for everybody, and there are teams out there who do remote work really, really well and can take on a junior developer and onboard them really well when it comes to that sort of thing. It's just not the way that I necessarily wanted my first job to be. First time for me too. Thanks for answering my question. Absolutely, Liam. Anytime, my man. Anytime. What is your choice, React, Angular, or Vue? Personally, I'm a React guy just because there's more opportunity in it right now. Vue's super popular right now. It's coming up in popularity, but there's just not as many opportunities for jobs in it like today. That could change in 6 months or a year, but right now, React is kind of the king of this thing. Plus, I enjoy doing React. I enjoy React way more than my experience with Angular 1. What are some of the coding questions you nailed in the job interview of the job that I currently have? So, funny story about the job that I currently have. The technical interview was super duper simple. The job that I have now, I knew somebody who worked there through their spouse. Their husband and I worked together before. And my technical interview for this job was less technical questions, like coding challenge technical questions, and more speak to what you've done. And I was able to speak to things that I've built back in my Angular days and things that I built in my React days. And it was more about feeling out for how my brain worked and that sort of thing, as opposed to like hard and fast, correct or incorrect technical answers. Learning JavaScript and all that stuff on Free Code Camp right now. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, both Aaron and Red Dragon. So I don't have much experience with Free Code Camp, but I know a lot of people really like it. I know Richard Code's a really big fan of Free Code Camp. And yeah, I think if it teaches you things and you like the way that it's structured and the learning style, then I'm all for it. JavaScript's important to get on the web though. If you want to do web development, especially on the front end, JavaScript's super useful. I've been a net system admin, senior help desk IT ops for years. I'm 10th on the FCC overall leaderboard. What recommendation for someone like me to move from ops to dev? Do you know? Start learning. That's the most important thing, is start learning. Go sign up for Codecademy, take the HTML, CSS course, see if you like it. If you're already more advanced than that, take the JavaScript course and see if you like it. If you don't like it, try to find a backend language that you like. But you have to start learning. That's the biggest thing. The sooner that you sign up for your first course, the sooner that you start picking this stuff up, the sooner you are to getting a job as a web developer. What extensions do you recommend for VS Code for a front-end development? The only extension that I use on VS Code right now is the it's the enhanced like TypeScript linter, and I can't remember what it's called. But that's the only one that I use. I'm not a big extensions guy. I used Emmet for a long time when I was using Atom. Emmet is a way to make writing HTML super quick, but it doesn't work, as far as I know, or it used to not work with JSX, so it's pretty much pointless to have if you're writing React. But if you're writing HTML, I really like Emmet, and I think they have a VS integration as well. Anyone that's migrated from IT Ops Network System, Senior Help Desk side into development. So what you have to do is become a developer. You have to learn how to be development, right? It's gonna be the grind and the struggle. It's cool that you have an IT background, and that's super useful, and it's something that you can speak to for sure. But you got to get your code skills up to snuff. 3 a.m. watching the stream. That's what's up, Nazar. I appreciate that, my man. Is PHP dying? It depends on who you ask. Some people say so, but you know, WordPress is built on PHP, and WordPress powers what, 112% of the internet or something like that. But all joking aside, PHP is still a very super useful skill to have. There's a ton of code written in PHP. Python is really fun. I really want to get into machine learning. Python is kind of the only game in town. Not with TensorFlow. TensorFlow, you can use JavaScript. But yeah, Python is definitely useful for that. It's the big boy when it comes to that. Do you want to learn Python for backend development with Django, or jump to machine learning? I want to learn Python at its basic level right now. I want to see what it's all about. I want to see all the cool things that you can do with it. I would really like to use it for like with the Django framework for web development. I don't know that I want to. I would love to get into machine learning. There's a lot of like linear algebra stuff that I could probably pull off. I don't know if I want to spend the time to learn though. How much time do you commit into learning, studying a new technology on top of working your regular 8-hour shift? It's really dependent upon my motivation level. When I first started, I was doing a couple of hours a day typically, trying to learn new stuff. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I'm lucky if I spend an hour on tutorials a day. It's probably closer to an hour every couple of days when I'm trying to learn something new now. But it depends on the week. There are some weeks where I'll go on the weekend and I'll spend 4 or 5 hours just doing learning stuff. A lot of times on the weekends, a lot of times right after I get done working, I'll plop on a Udemy course and do some learning as well. Free Code Camp is a good path. You need a path when learning. Just pick one and try and stick with it. Absolutely. Can you in short say what you think when it's time for apply for your first junior job? I'm going to say something and it's going to sound like I'm being a smart aleck. Okay? It's going to sound like I'm being like a smart ass, and I'm not. It's time to apply for your junior development job probably before you think it's time for you to apply for a junior development job. And it's hard to come up with that actual time because you didn't go to school for it, right? You don't have a piece of paper that says it's ready for you to apply. My opinion is if you can build out front-end projects or back-end projects, depending upon which side of the aisle you fall on for that, from start to finish without a tutorial, but you can still use Google and Stack Overflow. But if you can build out a front-end project that is similar to the area that you want to work in. So if it's websites, if you can build out a website front to back, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, responsive, looking nice, can do it to spec, you're ready to apply for website jobs. If it's a web app, if you can do a web app, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, maybe a framework if you have that skill. If you can do it from front to back, pull in data from an API, display it on the screen, manipulate data, manipulate the DOM, those kind of things, you're probably ready. My opinion is that as soon as you get a little bit restless of learning and you have a good, solid understanding of JavaScript, you should start maybe applying to a couple jobs and asking for feedback. And that feedback is going to let you know kind of where you fit into the market. After 2 courses on Udemy, do you think I'm ready to apply for junior dev positions? It depends on what courses they are, my man. Depends on how much you've picked up from them. I would say that you might be close. If the 2 courses are one like HTML, CSS course and one like basic JavaScript course, you're probably a little bit farther off. If you have like HTML, CSS background and they're 2 JavaScript courses, you might be closer. I recommend going Team Treehouse even though it's not free. You get through an understanding of the base concepts of JavaScript. Absolutely, Red Dragon. I like Team Treehouse a lot, and I'm in the same boat. I've never really used Free Code Camp, but if you can't afford the $25 a month, man, you gotta get your grind on. Check out Free Code Camp. So would you say that extensions aren't necessary? It depends on what you're doing. There are certain extensions that make your life a lot easier depending upon what technologies you're working with. It's just for the things that I'm doing, I don't really need them. I'm interested in web dev, so I plan on doing Django, but I already know some MVC, so I could be quick, and machine learning is kind of a long-term goal. That's awesome, man. Live chat for the drive home from work. I'm about to get off, though, McCoder. I'm sorry. Also, don't watch my face when you're driving. Don't drive distracted. Also, I appreciate everybody in the chat giving advice where my knowledge lacks. I really do appreciate that. You guys are awesome and supportive. I really love this chat. Nobody's getting hype. Nobody's yelling. Nobody's telling anybody they're stupid. I always appreciate a good community, and I think that we're really building a nice community here, my guys and my gals. Fun fact, in the chat, I'm going to ask you guys a question. I'm going to get through these last couple of things, and then I'm going to sign off of here. But in the chat, if you had to guess, what do you think the demographic breakdown of my audience is on my videos? So male and female. How many do you think, like percentage-wise, male to female audience members? Because it shocks me a little bit. Although it probably shouldn't, what the breakdown is. I did not relocate for work. I'd already moved to North Carolina when I got my first job. I just happened to move to a place that's really good for web development. I'm super lucky and super blessed that I did. I'm 10th on the free code camp leaderboard, and I get told to take a Codecademy basic HTML, but I've already completed. I am very, very sorry about that, Revisualize. I didn't realize when you said top 10 on the leaderboard, I didn't realize you were talking about free code camp. I've never used free code camp, so it's hard for me to immediately recognize that. I thought you were meaning you were just like starting to transition over. So, yeah, I mean, if you have those base layer of skills that I just went over for how to apply for jobs, then start applying for them. How do you actually find a junior dev job to apply to? Go on Indeed, and type in junior web developer job, junior front-end job, JavaScript job. But past that, my biggest piece of advice is that don't just look for things that have junior in the title. Apply to jobs that have 2 or 3 years of experience as a requirement, because those requirements are written by HR people. They're not written by developers. Write a really cool cover letter, write a really awesome have a really awesome resume, and try to show your passion for this and get in front of the eyes of people who can get you a job. Because just because it says that you need 2 years doesn't mean that that's the only person that they're going to hire. They have to have 2 years. The first job I got, they wanted 2 years of experience. I didn't have it. Do you test front end or back end? You should test both. Test-driven development is a very, very important skill to have right now. I do not use New Relic. I do not know what New Relic is, actually. What is up, Noah? How's it going, my man? I can't curse, so they'll demonetize my videos. Coursework doesn't mean much. It's all about project completion. That's absolutely true. Having coursework does mean a lot when it comes to being able to complete the projects, right? But you need to have a portfolio that's got some projects on it. That's super useful. How close is WebRTC without having to use YouTube, etc.? I don't fully understand the question, my dude. You can study from home or go to school. All right, so the answer to the question is, Ruben got it exactly right. It's 90-10. 90 male, 10 female. I definitely thought the female percentage would be higher. Thank you, Marios. Dice for jobs. I've heard of Dice. I always use Indeed. I live in a mid-population city and have more dev jobs on Dice than Indeed. I was surprised. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I've never really used Dice, but Indeed's always kind of been my go-to, along with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a good place to find jobs. Stack Overflow has job postings. They aren't always really, like, there aren't always a ton of jobs on Stack Overflow, but all of those places have job postings as well. LinkedIn is a really big one, and I had a lot of opportunities come through LinkedIn. I found my first job on Indeed, and I got my second job through a connection. So what would I suggest first, React or Angular? React is easier to learn out of the box, but I would suggest learning whatever's more popular in your area for you to get that first job. Richard, I appreciate the compliment. The beard isn't bringing them in. I'm sorry. A lot of people hate on the beard, but I'm growing it out for another 2 weeks. Sorry, guys. But anyways, that is all I've got for you guys today. If you have any more questions, if you think of anything after the live stream, feel free to leave it down in the comments. I will respond. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I have no idea what the average age is. I didn't look that graphic or that demographic up. Oh yeah, I was surprised that there were so many women. No, I'm surprised that it's like that high. I understand that it was going to be lopsided. I didn't realize it was going to be 90-10, like 75-25 at least, right? But I don't know. Learn vanilla JavaScript first over a framework. Yeah, absolutely. It depends on, I mean, what would you suggest first, React or Angular? If those are my only two options, I would say, yeah, find your job market and which one's more popular. If you haven't learned regular JavaScript first, then learn vanilla JavaScript first is how I would say it, though. Cavs in Golden State. I hope so, McCoder. To the chagrin of Ramsey Jordan, I hope so. But I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I am going to hop off of here now, go get ready for dinner in a couple of hours. But yeah, we'll be back again, and we will be back next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Feel free to hop on then. Feel free to follow me Mirrored images. Feel free to follow me on Instagram for when I go randomly live. I'll update you guys on Instagram, or hit that subscribe button, turn on a little bell notification so you don't miss them. I might do something random this weekend. We'll see. But anyways, have a good night. I will see you all again very soon. Hello, Boneless Coding. Hello, Nick Learns Code. Thanks for coming out. Bye, Mom. I love you. I love you, Mom. Bye, McCoder. Bye, Richard. Have a good night, guys. Peace.